This is where the fun begins.
Hi everyone and welcome to my channel and this issue of our series, our show, there we go, of Talking EU. And I'm so happy to have Alex here with me, and I'm so happy to have Talking EU back. It's never really gone anywhere. I just put it on the back burner. And again, my name is Laura and I'm also known as OG Star Wars. And thank you guys for hopping in, and thank you, Alex, for allowing me to interview you today. How are you doing?
Thanks for having me. I'm doing good. Got my coffee.
There you go. Ready to go. Not coffee chat, but he's got his coffee.
Yeah.
He's ready to go. And those who don't know what Talking EU is about, Talking EU is about bringing in people who are what we would say EU enthusiasts, people who really got into the lore. I love to interview. Even if you're barely getting to the EU, I would love to interview you because it shows and shares our love, how we venture deeper into the lore after the 6 movies, after George's vision, and how it influenced you in your life here. So thank you again for allowing me to bring you in. And for those who are watching, please like and share on all platforms that you have that we are live here today. If you're joining on the replay, let us know you're here by leaving a comment below and maybe a question. Maybe Alex and myself can answer later on if you have a question for him or for me as well. And we have Iron Inquisitor here that has been hanging out for a while. So my boy, Alex, is here.
Hello,
and then Quinlan Voss. Let's go.
Another person you should have an interview. He's great.
Yes, I'm setting up the interview with him. So yeah. I mean, there's so many people to get through.
Yeah.
So
he's the future of the EU though. Like once Matt and Christopher Nelson retire, it's gonna be this guy.
Yes, and Christopher Nelson is here as well, and I'd love to get on Talking EU. So everybody's like, okay, I got this person, that person. Let me take names and contact you guys later. So take names. I'm taking names, you guys. And then so everybody's trickling in here. It's the afternoon during a work day, so a lot of people will probably catch the replay. So continue to share out as well. So Alex, what was your first? And so this is a series of questions, and I also do follow up with like quiz according to your favorite character that you've given me. So it's just fun thing, just something fun. So no alarm. You're not gonna get doxxed or gonna get hurt or anything if you can't get the quiz.
Not gonna get an F on the report card.
Yeah, you're not gonna get an F because sometimes they can be easy. Sometimes they, are something very nuanced that maybe you haven't picked up on yet. It's just a learning thing, and it's fun. So with that being said, I do, like I said, it's a series of questions. We get into those, we get deeper into your love of Star Wars. So what was your first Star Wars movie?
That is a good question. Honestly, I cannot remember what the first one was. I don't remember if it was the original trilogy or if it was the prequels, but I watched them all growing up. So, because I'm only 22, I turned 22 in January. So episode 3 came out when I was 4.
Okay.
So if I watched them before, I probably don't remember. So, but I'm going to go with episode 3 just because I remember that one the most growing up. That's probably because I watched it the most.
All right. Yeah. Episode 3. That's a great one too, out of the PT. I mean, that's my second favorite, but it's not about me. It's about you. So, so with that, what is your favorite OT movie or original trilogy for those who don't know?
Yeah, I used to say episode 5 for the longest time, and I think objectively, I think it's the better film, but I have more personal emotion to episode 6.
Okay, episode 6. All right. So what about episode 6 has you like more emotionally attached or more into the nuances and, of the movie?
Because the end of the movie, it has the redemption of Vader, and that's kind of what I've seen all of Star Wars as because of that film. Is just the ultimate story of redemption. I won't get too much into it, but I am a religious person, so I have that as my ultimate story of redemption.
Okay.
But as for fiction, this is my ultimate story of redemption. So
Yeah.
that's why I really resonate with it a lot.
Yeah. Did you really like the hero's journey arc
With
that
Luke,
laying
yeah,
down?
with Luke, yeah, I love that Luke went through all the things he went through in episode 4 and 5, and in the end, did not kill his father like basically Yoda and Obi-Wan were like, yeah, kill the guy, just end him, and he rose above that and said, no, I'm gonna save him, and he did.
Yes.
Oh.
Yes. I mean, Luke myself was the reason why I got into the EU. So, but I've been a part of the Star Wars fandom, I guess you could say, or my own journey with Star Wars since I was like 3. So, and my first movie was Empire Strikes Back. So, sharing my age here a little bit.
Okay.
So, but let's see here. So, what is your favorite prequel trilogy or PT movie? Would it be E3, like you said?
Probably. I hinge between them a lot
Okay.
in life, but I usually settle with 3 as my favorite. Yeah.
Okay. And so, elaborate more on that. So, what really got you into it, like the nuances and all that? Go ahead and expand on that a little bit more.
I just love the fall of Anakin and how that all plays out. I think Anakin versus Obi-Wan's one of the most iconic things in Star Wars. I love that whole final fight scene, which is why when I read the novelization to it, I was a bit disappointed that Stover just kind of breezes past it. But I mean, it's fair. There's a movie that exists, so if you want to see it, go watch the movie. But I was like, oh, he just did like a paragraph representing that whole like 15-minute fight. But I love seeing everything about episode 3. I love Palpatine's whole performance and everything going on with that. So that's why that one's my favorite.
Yeah. Top 3. Yeah, I was saying he's all top 3. We'll get to that here too. So out of the trilogies, the 2 trilogies, which one do you favor the most? And why?
It used to be the PT, but as I've gotten into, and this is probably heavily because of the expanding universe, I tend to prefer the OT now. But I love the prequels just as much. Maybe not just as much, but I love them a lot. So.
Yeah, we always tend to steer towards the first one, like trilogy we've seen. And for you remember the PT, especially the episode 3. So that makes sense. With me, minus the OT.
Yeah,
and it's because of Luke that I'm like, I want to know if he's going to keep his word and continue on training the Order, what's going to happen with it, all that stuff. And that's what took me into the EU, further into the Star Wars universe.
Because I think the OT tells a really good, simple story of the hero's journey.
Yeah.
Whereas I think the prequels, the execution is a bit to be desired as opposed to the original trilogy, but the actual story it's trying to tell is actually a lot more complex and interesting than the original trilogy. But the only issue is how it's executed, which hinders it from being my favorite. Otherwise, I probably would prefer the prequels.
Yeah. And everybody has their, like, there was so much that George wanted to tell for the PT because of Anakin's fall, that there is so much there that, like, he even, like, especially with episode 3, he had to make the decision to cut things out, which some of them, like when they were meeting about forming the alliance and stuff, and like what to do because of Palpatine taking hold of the Senate and stuff like that. We have, Belle and Mon Mothma and Padme, and they're sitting there talking in private. That's something that I wish they would have elaborated more on, and George wouldn't have cut that scene out because it would have given more nuance towards the OT on where everybody's at, why Leia or why Belle is a significant player in that, especially in the OT and stuff, and why Alderaan was targeted.
Yeah.
Luckily
the novelization exists that does add that scene in. So
exactly. So
that's why I don't see a lot of people prefer the novelization of episode 3 to episode 3, but I just see it as a companion piece, like something you should read alongside the movie to get like the full picture.
Yeah, episode 3 is novelization. Matthew did a magnificent job at that. Especially with working with George, making sure that, there's even EU tie-ins, because some of the EU tie-ins that George used throughout all of the movies, because you're always hearing someone call back to something that happened in the EU in the movie. It it lent so much to the story. It's like, to me, episode 3 could have been a 2-part series movie.
I could see that.
Mm-hmm. You know, maybe people won't be saying, "Oh, well, Anakin his fall was too quick." I didn't see it too quick. His decision maybe
I
was a
didn't
little.
either. Yeah.
Yeah, you've seen him fall from the beginning, but
Yeah.
like his
The whole point
decision.
was that episode 2 is the start because he
Mhm.
kills the Tuscans, and that's the start of it.
Yeah.
And then you have the 3-year Clone Wars, which yes, we don't get to see, but that's what the EU's for, to fill in that gap. And then episode 3 is just a culmination of everything that's been building up to that. So it's not like, oh, episode 2 Anakin, okay, now he's Darth Vader. No, it's episode 2 Anakin development Vader. So
Right.
I don't see it as bad as people seem to make it out to be, or some do.
Yeah, my cat just knocked over my ring light. Darth Toby strikes again. For those who don't know, I have an orange kitten or cat. He's like 5 months old or 6 months old, and he can raise hell when I'm on stream. Yeah. So what was your first EU material that you read or played?
When I started, I played KOTOR 1 and 2 because I bought them on my phone, which was not a good experience, but I did it anyway.
Oh,
And
okay.
then I listened to the Darth Bane audiobooks, which were illegally online for free on YouTube for a time till they got taken down. And then I bought Darth Plagueis so basically when I got into the EU, I was disappointed with the sequels.
Yeah.
And I wanted to see what this alternative take did with it. So I mostly focused on post Return of the Jedi stuff, but I skimmed around every era. So I read Darth Bane, I read Darth Plagueis, a couple things here and there during the prequels, but I mostly focused on everything after episode 6, which is when I really started buying all the books.
Yeah. So share a little bit more about you, how you got into the EU, since I, asked you what was your first EU material. So what got you into the EU?
Right. Well, so growing up, I'm a youngin'. I'm only 22. I just turned 22 in January. So when like Revenge of the Sith came out, I was 4 years old. So I didn't know anything about the EU. I'd played like The Force Unleashed growing up. I didn't know it was connected to anything, but I played that growing up. The sequels had come out. I didn't know about the whole buyout and the EU and everything. I didn't know that was even a thing. So I watched episode 7. I had my issues like with Han abandoning his family and everything, but I was so excited to see all those characters again that I just kind of put that to the back of my brain. It was like, that was an overall fun movie. And then episode 8 came out. A lot of people said the same things that I've said, issues with Luke, other things with that one chick with like purple hair. I don't remember. I haven't watched it since it came out, but a lot of issues I have with it. And I was like, I think I'm done with Star Wars. But I did like Kylo Ren, or at least I thought he was the most interesting. So I looked that up on YouTube to look up more about him, and I found Ryan Kennel's video. I don't know if it was on Ryan Kennel's channel or if it was Geeks and Gamers, but I found his video comparing and contrasting Jacen Solo versus Kylo Ren, and he talked about
I think we got a frozen Alex. Or am I frozen? Did we get a frozen Alex? Or am I frozen?
Sorry, did I break up?
Yeah, you froze. Like you were totally mid like conversation arm, like you know how people gesture with their arms, your arm was gesturing.
Yeah, okay. But I'm okay now? Yeah, it might be the rain that's causing that. Hopefully it doesn't happen too much.
Yeah, it's raining where I'm at. So
yeah. But yeah, so basically, I found Matt Wilkins' playlist, and I think at that point he had just gotten done with the Dark Times era or somewhere around that time, and I just started binging all of his videos. And that's how I found out about the EU.
Oh, originally. Nice. Yeah, so you went in thinking, okay, so Disney's sequel trilogy, I'm going to be down for that because I love Star Wars. I want to see what happens.
Yeah, well, it was the first Star Wars movie I got to see in theaters because, as I said, I was 4 years old when episode 3 came out. So it was exciting for me.
Yeah, exactly. That has to be exciting, especially The Force Awakens after so many years of not having a Star Wars movie. Yeah, so that everybody was hyped for that, no matter where you sat at on your decision or whatever. It was just the fact that Star Wars coming out in the theaters, got everybody hyped up for that. And then along comes the second installment, and people realizing that The Force Awakens is a soft reboot. Then the second installment comes in, and that's where I noticed a lot of people kind of started steering away from Disney and going into the EU, especially you. So, and it's interesting that to see that. And some people now are like, even with the shows that are being premiered now, and it's not necessarily it's not about Disney Star Wars, but I'm just correlating to people's journey here. Even the movies like the Book of Boba Fett or the shows, when they're realizing, man, that's not Boba Fett. They're returning back. And I have Boba Fett here. I have an Empire Strikes Back on.
Yeah.
So everybody's like, that's not Boba Fett. He doesn't act that way.
Mm-hmm.
He wouldn't, succumb to becoming a Tusken cultist, basically. You haven't really seen that. We were talking behind in the back before we started and stuff. But basically, yeah, that's what happened with that. So welcome to the EU. And I'm so thankful that our younger generations are coming in like fully immersing, diving yourselves headfirst into the lore.
Mm-hmm.
That's what, like myself, because like I said, I've been here for a while now, for a long time. I'm ancient, even if it doesn't look like it.
Okay. Matt's still older, so it's fine.
Yeah, it makes us feel great because we have younger generations coming in, sharing the lore and keeping it going and moving it forward, so everybody, and putting it out in front of everybody so that they can make their decisions on where they want to start with it. And at least reading, even if they're still in Disney lore and stuff, that's up to them, that they're still picking up these books here on the other side and keeping it alive.
Yeah, like I know you interviewed another friend of mine, Lance, earlier. Like last year or something, and he still kind of goes through both, and that's okay. That's his right. I'm of the Matt Wilkins approach where I just don't touch it. I don't talk about it or anything. I just focus on the EU because that's what I love. So
exactly. And I'm where I'm about bringing Star Wars in front of you. I will compare and contrast so you can make your decision. Like, okay, this is the character they brought in, like Theron, and this is the difference between the two, and all this other stuff. So we all have our platforms here and highlight things, and it's a beautiful thing that we all come together for the common cause of the EU, and then go and expand out with our own individual platforms and stuff like that. And L-Dub is here. Hey, Magneno, I am 29, also an EU fan. Question for you. I was able to grow up with the prequels in theaters while you had the sequels. You ended up finding the EU, yet sequel defenders say... So what kind of questions?
Oh, he has another thing underneath there that continues it.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
You're okay.
It just showed up on my end. Young folks will automatically like the sequels because it's the new thing to them. I tend to disagree and wanted your thoughts on that. Ooh,
I think it depends. I mean, I was still a teenager when those came out, and I didn't feel the same. So, I mean, it all depends on the person. Some people are going to be okay with the changes they made. And like I said, some people might not even know that the EU is a thing. So they might just go, well, that's the story, and I'm completely cool with that. And that's their right, I didn't know the EU was a thing. So I just watched those and be like, well, this is the new Star Wars, so I got to go see it. I didn't know anything about the buyout and everything like that at the time. I learned that after the fact. But even still, not knowing, I wasn't even comparing it to anything else. I only had the original 6 films compared to. I had no EU to be like, oh, well, this is better definitively. I just saw the movies themselves, and I had issues with them. And I was like, well, I'm done with this. And I would have been done with Star Wars if it had not been for finding out about the EU. So.
Yeah, and I think you've seen, because this is where your pivotal point is, and just giving an explanation how you got into the EU is once you got to episode 8, you realize that the Luke probably, and I'm not trying to put anything in your mind, are something about the lore, how the characters were portrayed, did not seem right to what George was doing.
Yeah, I'd already had issues with Han not being a family man in episode 7 because I'd always assumed that was the happy ever after, that they'd be together. And the fact that they weren't upset me, I'm like, why not? This is fiction. Can't we have, because I know real life that happens a lot, but it's fiction. I want people to be happy, damn it. So I was upset about that. But at the same time, it was so good to see Harrison Ford again that I kind of just ignored that and moved on forward. But episode 8 with Luke, I couldn't, people have made their arguments to defend it. And I don't, I haven't watched it since it came out. So my memory's fuzzy. I don't really care. But I just remember the scene where the argument is like he was never going to actually kill Kylo. He was just considering it for a split second, but he refrained from doing so. That's fine. Regardless, I don't think he'd even contemplate it. I don't think Luke would actually, even if he had no intention of actually doing it, the fact that he even thought it for a second went against everything I understood about Luke. So that's where I had the biggest issue with. And and then I don't remember the rest of the movie, but I just remember being upset throughout the rest of it. So, and then there are other things too, like with Poe, who I liked in episode 7, but he was just getting yelled at by Leia and this other lady for like a whole hour. And I was like, why is this here? So I just ended up not liking it, and I didn't watch episode 9. So
yeah, and that's fair. So let's go ahead and change directions now. This is all about your Star Wars experience, and that is part of your Star Wars experience, but mostly about, like, how you got into EU and what you like about it, all of that fun stuff. So I hardly asked this question, so I only asked one more person, I believe. I'm not too for sure. Which EU story, novel, or game did you not like? And expand on it further. This is kind of a controversy because everybody has their own opinion, and sometimes people are like, what? I like that, kind of deal. So go ahead and elaborate on that. Which stories you read so far that maybe are a series or whatever that you didn't particularly care about?
Well, there's a famous one because everybody makes references it to now because they mentioned me throwing a book, which I've only ever done once in a video. But even in Christopher Nelson's History of the EU Fandom, in one of the videos, he actually talks about me doing that, which I was like, I choked on my coffee because he mentioned me. And I was like, oh, Christopher Nelson mentioned me. So I one of the few things I skipped when going, because I've read basically all of Return of the Jedi era or post Return of the Jedi. I skipped a few things. Crystal Star was one of them, which I've now read and I love, by the way. The other one was Bounty Hunter Wars, which I did not read. So I read Bounty Hunter Wars, and I started out optimistic, and I ended it pissed off because I felt like I had wasted hours of my life reading this book. Because I like Boba. I think he's fine. My issues with those books is that it's really boring, which for Boba Fett, I would think would be the opposite because it's Boba Fett. But I don't know, for me, and I think Christopher Nelson said when the book actually came out, it was 50-50 with fans. Like people loved it or they didn't.
Right.
And I'm of the opinion that it sucked. I did not like it. I thought that Boba Fett kind of came off as a Gary Stu in it because he's just perfect and he never makes any mistakes. And then I also read Tales of the Bounty Hunters beforehand. And I felt like Dengar, which was my favorite part of Tales of the Bounty Hunters, was kind of stupid in this book. And I was like, why is he stupid? He wasn't stupid in his own story. And they also, Zuckuss and Forlom just go back to being bounty hunters when the whole point of their story in Tales of the Bounty Hunters was that they're like, oh, we're going to join the rebellion. So I was excited to see that more. And then they just went right back to it. So there's just a lot of things that disappointed me about that trilogy. And I got so mad by, what's it called? Hard Merchandise.
Yeah.
That I wasn't planning on doing this. I just worked myself up enough in my review that I shucked my book. And I said, skip this book. And so now everybody makes fun of me for that one. But
all right. Yeah. So Soul Assassin, is that video still up on your channel?
Oh, it's still up, yeah.
Okay, Soul Assassin, if you can, maybe he's one of my mods here. If you want to pull up that link to that video so you guys can watch that. Get us some more views, and of course, subscribe to Alex as well. That's very interesting because I was expecting like Crystal Star.
I actually really enjoyed that one.
I didn't have a problem. It's not my favorite, but I didn't think it was
not either. What I noticed is that the biggest thing with Crystal Star is Luke doesn't act like Luke. Now I know people have said like, oh well, he's getting over Callista, which was another trilogy I wasn't too fond of. Darksaber is amazing. The other two are not.
Yes.
But that was the excuse people made. Oh, well, he's getting over Callista, so he's upset. But still, he comes off nothing like himself. I like Star Trek, and I noticed it reads a lot like Star Trek because Vonda M. McIntyre wrote for Star Trek.
Right.
It's like, this is a great Star Trek novel. It's not a very good Star Wars book, except for the kid parts, which felt like a young adult book, which is a big problem when you're writing an adult novel for adults. But at the same time, it felt most like Star Wars when it focused on the kids, which I thought was the funniest thing. You got the weakest part of the book technically because it feels like it's for kids, but that ends up being the most Star Wars of the whole book. And then Waru, what do we even say about this wall of flesh that just I don't even know. But I love Waru because it's so bizarre and so out there, and I hope Supernatural Encounters dives into Waru a bit more because I need to know what is up with Waru because it's been one of the most bizarre things in all of the EU.
Yeah, we have the bizarre Waru, and then you have the Vong, which basically they come from outside of the galaxy, and some people don't like the new Jedi Order because of the Vong.
Yeah.
Or because how dark, they didn't want to see beloved characters get killed off, which if Star Wars didn't take, the EU didn't take measures, it'd have been just the same boring story over and over again. You have to have some stakes going on in the story. And I get people don't want to see like the children of Leia and Han die, you know, especially the one that's supposed to be like Luke's predecessor, you know, Anakin. And, you know, and George made that decision, and that's what's, you know, changed it to Jacen, and the story goes on to its own, like it goes, like it forked right there in the road there, and he goes, and we have Jacen there, and we have the death of Anakin. Spoilers if no one knows. I'm pretty sure everybody knows about that, whether you read it or not. So I'm going to have you answer this before we move on to the next question for you. What's your opinion on TCW? That's another hot take, a hot thing going on here.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up with it, and I used to really love it. As I got into the EU, I've had major problems with it, especially when I tried going in chronological order because I got into the Clone Wars era, and I did include TCW because I can't throw it away. Because if Lucasfilm was still around, it would be a part of the continuity, and it would simply be a matter of trying to fix the mistakes. But just like with the EU, everything good and bad, we take it or leave it, doesn't matter. It's all connected. It all fits eventually. So I accept TCW as canon. There are episodes I like. There's a lot I dislike. But actually, this little small plug-in, in April, me and Quinlan Voss, Brennan, have a podcast that's going to be coming out on the Expendiverse website. Matt's site. And one of the episodes we have is called Forgiving Filoni, like trying like really hard to find positives with Filoni Clone Wars, which half of the video is us just fixing mistakes. Which is kind of what it always dwells into. But I'm very mixed on it. There's a lot of it I really dislike. There are moments of brilliance. I think there are some genuinely good stuff in there, but it's just a very frustrating show if you care about the Expanded Universe.
Exactly. And another person, I don't know if you watch, you might have, but Tad Larkin's Captain Fordo ones that he did and broke it down in his second part 2 of his video on that. Yeah, so he did a magnificent job. And I'm pretty sure there's more than what he presented, but
and I understand what he's saying, but I mean, as far as Lucasfilm's concerned, if the EU was never decanonized, then TCW would be canon, and we would just have to work around that. It wouldn't be, you can't just throw it out. Just like we can't throw Jedi Prince out or any other book you think sucks out. We just have to take it and be like, how do we fix this?
Or we just ignore it altogether.
True, you know? You can do that too, but I'm just trying to think like how Lucasfilm would have gone about it back in the day.
Yeah, and I think at the time, and I've said this many times on my show, is that as TCW was being created, then when the novels started coming out, there was either retconning to make it fit, or or retconning to where you have Abeloth, and it kind of makes the Mortis part a little bit more chewable, I guess you can say. What's going on and stuff. So they helped kind of correct some of those errors. But if the company would have been sold, maybe we would have seen a lot more course correction from TCW.
I think there would have been.
Yeah, because that's what they were going. That's the direction they were going, is making those corrections so that everything remained canon, or in one single continuity as possible. And being such a company, and George Lucas broke world records with this, like the most books spinning off of the movies, and also a single franchise with a single history without any reboots. And that's the beautiful thing. And I think that's what why many people got into the EU is because they're like, everything is a continuation from these stories in between and all this. And we want to know more.
Yeah.
We want to know more. All right.
Absolutely.
So, who is your favorite character movie character and why? So like in the PT, who do you like, and in the OT?
It's either between Obi-Wan or Palpatine, but hero-wise, I guess I'd say Obi-Wan, and then of course the ultimate villain of Star Wars, Palpatine, because Ian McDiarmid's performance is just incredible.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah. He basically both trilogies he really pulled significantly well, and and he's like one of the few characters that was in all of them.
yeah. Well,
Yeah.
except for 4.
Except for with the exception of 4, but still, he was like the main one. He was still the back there in the background,
Yeah.
pushing everything, controlling everything, the mastermind as we see him in the PT. And it amazes me how people don't realize with Anakin's fall, and TCW, I think, kind of failed on that because Anakin's fall was the manipulation of Palpatine. It wasn't necessarily the Order, although the Order did have some dogmatic, ways of attachment, how they seen attachment and stuff.
Yeah.
But,
had the Order been like Luke, so he probably would have been fine.
Right. And if Anakin didn't have Palpatine manipulating him to the dark side, it could have been different too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. He would have left. He probably would have left maybe for Padme. We don't know. We could share what ifs, but just thinking about that, the main cause of Anakin's fall was not only himself, but the manipulation of Palpatine. And, and I think he's brilliant because he orchestrated both wars, and it was brilliant. That was a brilliant part of the PT. So who is your favorite EU character and why?
Well, you kind of spoiled it with your thumbnail.
Well, I always share people's favorite character. So go ahead.
Yeah. Jacen Solo is my favorite character in the Star Wars Extended Universe.
Yeah, and go ahead and expound on why.
Well, I mean, I knew the direction it would take. There's other friends of mine, like Quality Autism, Noah, who hates that part of the story, doesn't count it, which is fine. But I knew going in that was the direction it was eventually going to take. But it was just such a crazy journey because I eventually make it to the Thrawn trilogy, and I get to see this person be born. I literally see him be born in real time. I see him as a little kid throughout several stories. I see his adventures in Young Jedi Knights, and then all the hardships and stuff he goes through in New Jedi Order, and all the way up to Legacy of the Force, and then he dies. It's like I got to see this guy's entire life, and I was just there for all of it. And I don't know, it was everything I liked about Kylo Ren, but a million times better. And I love that. And there's some issues like Darkness says there's a 5-year gap. We don't get to see that 5-year gap. And then he's just different. But I mean, if EU gets continued, that could always be explored and explained, to make that fit better. One of my biggest issues actually with my only issue really with New Jedi Order is that you start, because there's only a 6-month gap in between the final book in Young Jedi Knights and the first book in New Jedi Order. And Jacen goes from funny guy that likes to talk to animals and is dating Tenel Ka by the end of it, like literally by the very end of that one, to, he's not with Tenel Ka anymore and he's the super philosophical guy. And I was like, what? In 6 months, what happened to you, dude? And they don't address it at all.
Yeah, it's like a disconnect there.
Which is actually... I talked about that like a couple weeks ago with Brennan Quinlan Voss. So now we're actually working on a fan fiction explaining that 6-month gap. Because another thing we realized when we started talking about that was that Anja Galandro, the daughter of the bad guy from the Brian Daley Han Solo trilogy, is never mentioned after Young Jedi Knights. What happened to her?
Right.
So that's what we're going to explore. Just to kind of help explain why Jacen gets so into his studies instead of being with Tenel Ka.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, is like, we can sit here and say, okay, so if the franchise wasn't sold, could we have gotten like Jacen's exploration of the Force on his sabbatical for 5 years. And then also like any transition areas of, his personality and stuff like that. Could they have, done some short stories for that as well? We will never know. So
Yeah.
now we're just sitting here like with what ifs and stuff. And
but overall, though, even though we don't have the full picture, I mean, I never like telling and not showing, which is basically what darkness does. It just tells you that Jacen's changed. It doesn't really show you, which I would have liked to see that. But if you're willing to accept that, what they tell you, I think his story is great from beginning to end. I think Jacen is one of the most compelling arcs in all of fiction. I love that he is like the opposite of Kylo Ren again, where he's not a fan of his grandfather. He's comparing himself to his grandfather, saying, no, I'm literally older than you. I went through New Jedi Order, which is a way bigger problem than any of your Clone Wars was. Okay. I've dealt with some stuff at a younger age than you did. And I'm now older than you at the time that you fell. I know what's up. I know what's right. And I'm not going to fall. Like, because you were younger and you did things for selfish reasons. Everything I'm doing is for the good of the galaxy. So I will not fall. And I love that about him. But even in New Jedi Order alone, like the book, and another thing that I love is because, so I start New Jedi Order and Jacen's this really annoying, like, not like atheist, but he like likes to question everything.
Right.
He does that with Luke. He does that with Han. And I love, there's some part, I forget which book it is in New Jedi Order, but Han basically says like, shut up and go enter the gun area or whatever, because we need help and you're on my damn ship. So you're going to do what I say. And I love that. It's like, yeah, you freaking tell him, because Jacen's so freaking annoying. And that did not change up until Traitor, where I went from, oh, I hate this guy now, he's so annoying and frustrating to deal with, to, oh my God, I love this guy, through the rest of New Jedi Order. So it's like this whole like emotional roller coaster I've had with this character, where I loved him in Young Jedi Knights because he was the funny guy, and to this really annoying, questioning guy in New Jedi Order, to what he becomes in the second half of the series and moving forward. I love his entire arc.
Yeah. And it's good as you like, as okay, let's apply to like real life, our reality, growing from a child into a teen into adult. Our teenage years are the most awkward years ever, because we're in between adolescence and adulthood. So we begin to question things. We begin to question ourselves. We begin to question our parents and the direction that we want to go. And, so that's how I seen Jacen in his story, about starting to question everything. Like, okay, so this is what I was raised with, but why not this? Or what is this? Or how come that? And I think that if they didn't have a character expand on questioning about the Force and stuff, and the ways of the Jedi, or how Jedi approach things, it wouldn't do the story justice, but then people wouldn't be able to relate with the character as well. Because, we're experiencing a personal growth of Jacen during that time, no matter his age, to where, okay, I'm going to start questioning you or this. And then he also questioned his brother's Anakin's way and approach of the Force, which that was a very interesting story in itself.
Yes, it was.
Yeah. And so I'm going to do your first quiz question here.
Okay.
So, and again, people, this is just for the fun of it. That's not going to, discredit him or anything like that, because sometimes there's things that we don't even pick up until we read it, maybe the third or fourth time. Even Matt Wilkins, he's doing his reread, was like, oh, yes, I noticed that here, because it's such a big story. You're taking so much in. There's some things you may miss the first time. So who was born first, Jacen or Jaina?
Jaina.
Okay.
She has like a 5-second ahead of him.
Yes. And a nice little fun fact, and I don't know if you would know this, maybe you do. Leia was in labor with the twins for 10 hours. So
I do not remember that.
So I was researching these quizzes. I'm like, what should I ask, and on these quizzes and stuff. And sometimes they're just fun, simple questions and stuff, just to get, you into that portion of the interview. Yeah. So Jaina was born first. And for those who don't know, Jaina was named after Han's mom, and then I think, how did Jacen's name come about?
I don't know.
Because they were gonna, wasn't he supposed to be Han or something, like the junior? And then they were gonna no, that was Anakin. Anakin was supposed to be junior. So, so that one right there, I just think that's something that they just came up that had no familial relationship other than that he's uniquely himself, and not
Yeah.
named after anybody. So yeah.
Mm.
So what is your favorite EU series and tell why?
New Jedi Order.
Okay.
Because it's the culmination of everything that you read in the Bantam era. Finishing it off. Not to mention, my favorite character is Jacen Solo, but a close second is Kip Duran, and Kip Duran gets a lot of love in that series, so that made me happy. But I love the Vong. I think it's a great concept. I love the idea of these beings outside the Force. I don't agree that it's like this issue that they are. I mean, they explain it by the end of the series anyway, how that all happened. If they had the patience, it would have been paid off. But I love how, like, I went through all of the Bantam era, starting at Truce of Bakora, to get this alternative sequel. And it even if I didn't like a story like the Callista trilogy, or actually not even Bounty Hunter Wars, because Bounty Hunter Wars is so irrelevant that it never gets mentioned again outside of like the Kuat Drive Yards. Anyway, I'm going to get off of hating on that trilogy.
You went back to that. You went back to
that. Yeah, just to hate on it for a second more because I hate it. But but anyway, so
put a knife into that back of that series.
Yeah, just real quick. But every single story though that you read in the Bantam era, starting at Truce of Bakor onward, will get referenced and is in some way, even if it's a small part, is important to New Jedi Order. So it's just like this ultimate culmination of all these hours that I spent. And I'm like, man, my time that I invested is rewarded for having done all that. Now I get to appreciate all these little things that are in New Jedi Order because I took the time to read all these other stories. And so that was a great thing. It was kind of like what the MCU tried to do for a little bit with the Marvel Cinematic Universe, where it was kind of like that too, but to a lesser extent. And so I love that about it. Nama Noor is probably one of my favorite villains ever. I don't know if you ever seen Game of Thrones, but he reminds me of Littlefinger.
On Game of Thrones. Yeah, I'm not too privy of that.
Well, he's just like this. He's like Palpatine in a sense, except that he's not playing 40 chess because he doesn't know all the variables, but he's always trying to make sure that he's, if not at the top, that he's safely close to the top. And he doesn't care about anybody else but himself. And I just love the way he manipulates everybody and will like, oh, the Vong have this religious stuff against technology. I don't care. I'll use it when I need to, like he does in the Star by Star.
He goes against his own beliefs, his own traditional cultural upbringing to make ends meet, basically.
Exactly. I love that about it. But so just everything about New Jedi Order, I just think I think it is the pinnacle of Star Wars. I think it's better than the films. I think it's better than most of the Star Wars books out there. It's just the peak of what Star Wars can be and will be. I like Legacy of the Force and Fate of the Jedi, but it does not come close to New Jedi Order for me. It's at the peak of Star Wars.
If you had to pick a favorite book, or maybe a couple, because I know it's a 19-book series, what would you be your absolute favorite?
Oh, wait, one more time? Sorry.
Out of New Jedi Order, if you had to pick a book or two that is your absolute favorite, what would they be? Like, what books? I know it's a 19-book series. Yeah.
Traitor's my favorite book it might be one of my favorite EU books ever, but it's definitely my favorite of New Jedi Order. Yeah. I love that it's very self-contained. There's like 4 characters. Like you look at the character list before you start the book and there's like 4 characters in it. It's Nama Noor, Vergere, Jacen, and a few others. That's it. And it's just Vergere talking to Jacen for like half the book. And I loved that. That is the only book. I started it at like 7 a.m. in the morning and I finished it in one day. I didn't go to the bathroom. I didn't eat. I didn't do anything. I just read that and I finished it all in a single day.
You're like, plug an IV in me. I'm not moving.
Yeah, I'm not moving. No, I could not. I couldn't go to the bathroom or anything. That book had to be finished. And so I did. It's the only book I've done that with. So I absolutely love that book.
One of the few that does not go back to the beloved, like 3 characters, Luke, Leia, and Han. It was very even though it's a part of the greater series, it was very, very compact in like the characters and expanded on just a few characters. I wouldn't say it's self-absorbed because no, it's not, because it did lend to the story going on. Yeah. And again, Matthew Stover written that too. So that was another one of his greater books as well.
It's my favorite Stover novel.
Oh, is it?
Mhm.
Nice.
Well, at
Nice.
least out of Star Wars. I haven't read his stuff outside of Star Wars.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. So, with Vergere, what did you like about her in that book, Trader?
Yeah, another controversial thing, depending on who's watching this.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Everybody, I mean, we all have controversial things. Some people will like, some people won't. We'll have our own opinions. This is what the fandom's about.
yeah. She's my well, underneath her is Tenel Ka, but she's my favorite female character in Star Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think Vergere is really interesting. I since Trader's such a vague book and is very contemplative.
Yeah.
The way I understood Vergere before getting into Legacy of the Force or anything like that was that she was a Jedi from the Old Republic and she spent like 20 years with these beings outside the Force. That'd be like being an atheist and being in heaven for 20 years. Like everything you thought you understood about the world was wrong.
Right.
And so we get to New Jedi Order, and people like to say that she tortured Jacen, which is false. It was the Vong who was torturing Jacen. She just allowed it to happen. I mean, I don't know how much she was supposed to do when it was an entire planet of Vong. She's just one person. But she gave him philosophy lessons in between that time. But I think
Give him breaks too of the torture, because when she visited him, he was basically she commanded the chair and stuff to detract and all that stuff. So she basically gave him breaks from actual torture.
True. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
But I think her whole thing to me is that she is a good person that has a flawed ideology because it goes against what I think the universe as a whole tells us in Star Wars. And so that won't help. I don't agree that she wants Jacen to be a Sith or anything like that. I think she is generally trying to help him as best as she understands how. And so her opinion of the Force has been skewed because of the Vong. And she thinks that the light and dark aren't real things.
Yeah.
That if you become a dark sider, it's because that you yourself are a bad person.
Yeah.
I think that's her view. And so for Jacen, when he hears that, it doesn't do it. I don't think it does anything for him in New Jedi Order, but moving forward, adopting that sort of mindset is very dangerous because we have plenty of examples, I think, within all of the EU of the dark side being an actual spiritual thing that can affect you. Like what we talked about episode 3 earlier, and like Anakin goes from Anakin to killing children. But at the same time, that was being built up because he repressed his emotions for so long to try to follow the Jedi code. And once he drank in that dark side, it's kind of like doing drugs. So that initial step where you put that heroin needle or whatever into you, that's your choice. You chose to do that. But as you do that, it takes control of you and then you become addicted. So that's kind of how I view the dark side, where it's like, yes, the initial actions are your choice, but it does start to control you. And so I think it's very dangerous to tell somebody, especially Jacen, that it's just who you are as a person. If you go dark, it's your fault. So if you believe you're a good person and you're doing the right thing, then there should be no issue. You theoretically should not go to the dark side. And I think her heart's in the right place because in Destiny's Way, she sacrifices herself for him. But I don't think that was the ideology he needed to learn. Yeah. So because of that, it affects him moving forward. Maybe not in a way that she even necessarily wanted, but in a way that ended negatively for our characters. But I think she... Oh, sorry.
No, you go ahead. Go. Finish.
I think she's just as compelling as Kreia from the KOTOR 2. She is different. She has a different belief than Kreia, but I think they're both the same in being strong female characters that have very different understandings of the universe as we've come to understand it. And that's why I find her so fascinating. Yeah.
And then even with Vergere and when she's in prison and Luke goes to talk with her, she also makes Luke start questioning, his own philosophy, his own ways and stuff too. So that was an intriguing part. And so with the ascension of her becoming dark and a Sith or whatever you want to call it, because how her thought process was, and people could probably compare her to Kreia, like you said, but because it was so vague, it was easy for the writers to switch directions with her after George said, hey, we're going to focus the story going this way now with Jacen rather than with Anakin, because I want Anakin killed, kind of deal. I don't want two Anakins existing in the same, during the same time of the Star Wars coming out to the public. And so that's where we've seen a lot of the changes with Vergere, because her depiction was very vague on which way she can go because of her beliefs.
Yeah, well, Traitors after Anakin died, but it's interesting because Stover writes her in a very vague way,
right?
And then what's his name, Walter Williams, something like that. Whoever wrote the one afterwards, Destiny's Way, she's written a bit differently. She's written a bit more, I feel like, a Jedi. In Destiny's Way than she is in the previous book, which is more ambiguous. So it kind of has a confliction of like what is she supposed to be, which I think only helps her be more interesting. Like she's the type of character that I think I like her more than even like Yoda. Like Yoda is one of the best.
Wow, that's a hot take right there. Look at everybody's like, what?
Yeah, because Yoda's like that iconic character, but like you can kind of figure him out. If you read enough of the EU and you watch the movies, you're like, I get you. I get what you're all about. But Vergere, I feel like because she's featured so little, you can't get a clear picture of her.
Right.
So, I love that. So
yeah. And before we move on with my questions, Raven Chist says, who is Alex's favorite character from Tales of the Jedi?
Whew, that's another good one.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that I'm torn between two, because I think Exar Kun's one of the coolest Sith Lords ever. And I love that he comes back in Jedi Academy Trilogy. But and he was the first one to have the double-bladed lightsaber, which made Darth Maul end up having it in the prequels. But I think I got to give it to Ulick solely because of Redemption, the comic series, which is honestly, it's basically The Last Jedi, but done right. Like that whole story it's a similar themes and ideas with that whole comic book, but it's one of the few stories that has made me cry. Was that redemption arc with him, and I loved everything about it. I love that he didn't have the Force in him anymore, and Nomi wanted to train with him. And the whole ending with him and everything went down. I thought it was just an absolutely beautiful comic. Yeah. So I think I'll go with Ulick.
Okay, awesome. Raven just says, I think Alex's hottest take is so far is liking New Jedi more than the films.
It's peak Star Wars.
Yeah, and then Exar Kun is criminally underrated.
He is.
Yes. And then even the New Jedi Order is S tier.
Yeah.
So
New Jedi Order can't exist without the movies. But that being said, New Jedi Order just builds upon everything the movies did and makes it 100 million times better. So I will stand by my opinion that NGO is better than the movies. So.
Yes. And speaking, we did talk about, Jaina and Jacen, the birth and stuff for the quiz part. So what do you think about Jacen's twin, Jaina?
I love Jaina. I think she's a really awesome character. Only thing that I think, but in New Jedi Order, she is dubbed by Luke, seemingly by the Force, which is another point against Vergere, or at least in her what I believe her understanding is, because if we're to understand this, it's the Force literally going through him, making like a prophecy, basically.
Right.
That's like, because the Force, in all intents and purposes, is this universe's God, this spiritual nature. And so Jaina's supposed to be the sword of the Jedi. And she kills her brother, in Legacy of the Force, but I never really felt like she earned that title, because that's like a really epic thing to be called. And and Abeloth's still alive by the end of Fate of the Jedi. So I think if the EU would ever be continued and she were the one to finally slay like Abeloth or something, I feel like she would have earned that title. But as of yet, I just feel like she's a really awesome Jedi. I just don't feel like she's earned that title. But that being said, I like her character overall. I like that she's more like a pilot, like her father. I love her entire relationship with Jag. I think that's fantastic. And
so you're on the Jag side rather than the Zek side.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That's another thing that everybody talks about is like, I'd rather her stay with Zek. I hate Jag or whatever.
I like Zek in Young Jedi Knights, but Jag is just better in every way, shape, and form. So that's my take anyway.
Yeah.
But So, but overall, I think Jaina's a phenomenal character.
So did you did you get a chance, or did you make it to Legacy comics with Cade
Oh
and
yeah, I've read those too.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah,
Yeah, so that's another thing. Like, if we get the EU continued, I want to see like how did that start? How the Fell Empire start? What
right,
is Anya Solo? Because Legacy 2 does not explain those threads because we got the Fell Empress, which is a descendant of Solos.
right.
We got Cade, who's obviously a descendant of Luke and Ben and everything. So where the frick does Anya fit in here? Because
Yeah,
that's never explained.
yeah. Did
So
Alana end up losing, the consortium? Like, did it fall, or did she go into exile, and then her generations? Then so we have all these what ifs. Like,
there's so many stories left to tell. So
yeah, yeah. So was she from Anya, or whatever, and what happened with that?
mhm.
Or is this another solo line? Um, Maybe Thraken or something. I don't know.
That
There's
would be crazy.
yeah,
That'd be the most crazy plot twist that Thraken
yes,
is the great great grandfather or something of Anya Solo. That'd
exactly.
be
Yeah,
that'd be amazing. Actually, I hope
yeah.
that becomes canon. I'd be down for that.
Exactly. So, I
Uh,
mean, I always thought about that because, like, when you get to Anya's story and you're like, she's like, oh, Solo, she kind of like snarks at it a little bit, like, especially when it goes back to like Han and stuff like
mhm.
that. And then I'm thinking, kind of sounds like Thraken.
Yeah. I also love Thraken. I think he's a great villain. I like the fact that it just plays on the evil twin trope where he's really just Han with a mustache. I think that's hilarious.
Yeah. What'd you think about when they went to go execute him with Boba Fett, Han, and Myrta
Oh,
and
I I thought that was executed great, and it was about time too, because he deserved to die like a million times over before, but he just kept he kept slipping through the fingers, and he just
yeah.
like escaped his own trilogy, escaped New Jedi Order. I'm like, man, this guy just keeps getting away with it. So I'm glad that he finally got his comeuppance in Legacy of the Force.
Yes, yes. And then what did you think about Jacen? So this is going back. What did you think about Jacen and Anakin's relationship in New Jedi Order? Because Anakin's like always training, with his fighting abilities and stuff like that. Versus Jason's like, no, you shouldn't be approaching it that way.
Yeah. Well,
So
I
what?
was always on Anakin's side because up until Traitor, Jacen was just being annoying to me. So I
Yes.
was feeling on Anakin's side. I liked their discussions though. I thought they were very interesting. The philosophical debates they would have. It was a similar thing to where they kept having tension between each other, kind of
Hmm.
like Han did with Anakin, both
Yeah.
of which ended poorly for them. But I like that it kind of it's kind of a big thing. No matter where you take Jacen, whether or not you accept books after New Jedi Order or whatnot, Anakin's death had a huge effect on him, no matter how you take that. So, because he'd been fighting with Anakin for so many books, and then Anakin dies a hero, and that
Mhm.
inspires Jacen to do the same thing to
Mhm.
make sure his team gets out.
Yes.
And he's fully expecting to die there. He ends up not dying, but that was what he expected to happen. So I think even though Anakin was the younger brother, he inspired Jacen more than Jacen ever did Anakin.
Yeah. And it was just so heartbreaking. I'm currently rereading through the New Jedi Order, and I'm
Mhm.
on Star by Star now. And it's like some of the New Jedi Order YouTube channel has some of them, but doesn't have the whole collection up yet for the New Jedi Order.
Yeah.
And so, but I'm listening to the Audible on YouTube, so it's the unabridged version, and I have the book in front of me here, so I'm following along with it. And
Mhm.
man, that's so heartbreaking. I'm at the part where they feel his death. They feel Anakin's death.
Right. Right.
And that will always continue to get me.
Yeah.
You
Like
know,
when Leia can't finish her sentence, she
yeah.
says Anakin. Han
Hmm.
starts shooting up the room. It's a great
Yes.
scene.
Yeah. And then her holding on to baby Ben too,
Right. Yeah.
because she's realizing the loss, and Ben's like taking everything in as a baby, and Luke is trying to control his emotions because Mara's like, you need to control it because Ben can feel you. There's a lot going on in that, and it goes back into the Force, it goes back into the lore. Great writing. And I think
Mhm.
maybe are you a I know there's some people that there's anti-Troy Denning groups out there.
Yeah.
um
Quality autism. Oh, no, I love the guy, but I'll always disagree with him on that. No, I'm not the biggest fan of Troy Denning. I don't think any of his books are my favorite.
Uh-huh.
Like in Fate of the Jedi and Legacy of the Force, none of his books are my favorite. Aaron Alston's and Karen Travis's I prefer over his books.
Yeah, and I've heard a lot of people
but
say that.
I don't hate him. I think he makes okay books.
Yeah.
By Star is probably one of my favorites of his.
Yeah.
That and Tatooine's Ghost,
Yeah.
which is also controversial because a lot of people like Matt Wilkins don't like when you try to mesh the prequels with the OT. But I love that about Tatooine's Ghost because I was like,
that's discovery. Leia's discovery.
Yeah, because the whole thing too is they weren't allowed to touch prequel era because George was like, I might make prequels, so you're not allowed to touch it. But like had George not said that, they would have explored the past. So the only reason they didn't is because George Lucas forbid it. So it just feels like a natural thing to be like, oh well, now we have that. Let's have the OT characters come to an understanding of the prequel era. And I like that because as someone who grew up with the prequels, it's like, yay, now the OT, this is like the final connection here. You get to finally have the OT characters understand what was going on in the prequels. And it's a little contrived, sure, right? They just happen to find Shmi's journal.
Yeah, under some mushrooms by evaporator. Yeah.
It's a little contrived. It's a little forced. But that being said, I don't mind it. I like that Leia gets to learn about her grandmother. I think that's something only the EU could do. I like that in Truce of Bakora, she accepts that Anakin is her father, but she doesn't really accept him.
Right.
She just accepts that fact.
Yeah.
So Tatooine's Ghost was a way of going, okay, now she actually forgives him.
Yeah.
And now when Dark Empire comes, it now has more weight that she decides to name her youngest son Anakin as a way of redeeming the name.
Yeah. And then with Tatooine Ghost, with her forgiveness of Anakin, it also then allows her to decide to have a family.
Because that was also another. Sorry, no, go ahead.
And that's one of the main things is that she was like, I don't want to birth any more Darth Vaders.
Right. I love that about. So I hadn't remembered it when I went to reread it. Her and Han were having these conversations about kids, and I thought it was such a realistic discussion because there's a lot of people my age like I'm never gonna have kids, and I'm always like, wait another 10 years and I'll see if you still hold that opinion. Because a lot of people say that when they're young, right. I don't want kids. And then all of a sudden they're 10 years older, they want kids. I always find that funny. So when they're having the conversation where she's talking to Han and she's like, why is this coming up? You told me that you were okay with never having kids.
Right.
Like, yeah, I meant that at the time. I've spent time with you now and I've kind of changed my opinion now. I want kids. And she's like, why are you bringing this up now? And she's got all this anger. And I just thought that was handled really well. So right. I thought that was really great. And I don't think people ever really talk about that when they talk about these books. So
yeah. And I liked the discovery of how the journal pad was discovered could have been done a lot better. I agree. Why didn't they decide to have Elwyn Lars hide it? And then when the Dark Lighters bought the facility, maybe they found it hidden somewhere in a cabinet or whatever. Instead of a greater mushroom, where these things are always tended to all the time because that's their business.
Yeah.
So that was a bit contrived, I guess you can say. It could have been handled a lot better. That I do agree with. However, I like the fact that it was, destroyed a bit from the weather, and that she only got bits and pieces of the story. But her finding out who her grandmother is, and her grandmother was once a slave, where she was raised as a princess. Also, it was very humbling to her. And it's good to see this humbling happen and stuff. I do like the story because of that, because of the discovery of who she is. And her talking to Luke. And he's like, yeah, I knew that. There's some things I knew. And she's like, well, why didn't you tell me? And he's like, because you would have been triggered, basically.
Yeah.
Crazy, but that would have triggered you. So I just left.
You told me not to talk about this stuff. So I didn't. Now you're yelling at me. I can't win.
Yeah. Exactly. And, later on when we get to Blackfeet Crisis, she's like, I'm sick and tired of you trying to just talk about our mom and our dad and blah, 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 blah. And, kind of flips on Luke. And he's like, okay. The reason why I told you in, Tatooine Ghost, basically, I didn't want to trigger you.
Yeah.
So
to be fair, her dad tortured her. So it's understandable why she's so upset about it. But
Exactly. So what are your thoughts of the Jedi Academy trilogy? And
I love it.
Save his uncle, and how Jacen helped save his uncle. So, what are your thoughts on that one?
So I absolutely love the Jedi Academy trilogy. I will fully admit, how Kevin J. Anderson writes, I've noticed
Right.
everything he writes comes across as like a young adult novel. Is something
Mhm.
I've noticed. It reads like a young adult novel, which is a problem when you're writing an adult novel. That being said, it's a lot of fun. Like NGO is peak, and it's something that we've been blessed with. But like Star Wars has never been this high art literature fiction. Like
Mhm.
it's fun, but it's never been like, oh, this is Citizen Kane, this is Godfather, this is, I don't know, think about your favorite, really well acted Academy Award winning movies. Like it's never been that. It's been a really fun sci-fi / fantasy experience that you go in to escape the world for a little bit. So, are there better books than Jedi Academy trilogy? Yes. Is Academy trilogy a lot of fun? Absolutely. It introduces my favorite character outside of the Skywalkers themselves, which is Kip Durin. I love Kip Durin to death.
Yeah.
I love the Exar Kun is this spiritual thing. That's another thing you brought up, Jacen helping defend Luke in that series or whatever, which people are like, oh, that's so stupid. Oh my gosh, it's so, why is Kevin J. Anderson so stupid? And it's like, but this is something that Luke's never really dealt with before. Like, yeah, he faced Vader and Palpatine, but those were all like physical, tangible threats. He's never really dealt with this spiritual threat. What is Luke supposed to do when this ghost demon basically appears and starts causing havoc on his school? Like, he's never experienced that before, so of course he's going to be out of his element. So, in like, it's not like this 2-year-old or 3-year-old, however old Jacen is, just defends him on his own. It's it's Luke Skywalker helping him do that. So for me, I don't have a problem with it. And I mean, this is the same universe that has the Ewok movies that are canon. So the Ewok movies can exist. As silly and fun as those are, I don't see any issue with the Jedi Academy trilogy. That was my
Yeah.
take.
Okay. Yeah. And I agree. Like how, like people were like talk bad about like, oh, well, some people use Jedi Academy as like Luke's OP. And I'm like, really? Because he's put in a coma. He's put in a forced
Yeah.
coma. How is that OP?
Right.
And stuff.
Yeah.
And then they'll go with, well, then Jacen is OP, or their kids, the grandkids are OP. And I'm like, not really, because Luke is basically his ghost, his spirit, his essence is guiding his nephew on how to protect him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's not doing that on his own volition.
Yeah. The other thing I hear a lot is that Dala is a bad villain, which I could see
he's very complex.
Yeah, I could see the argument made for that. I like Dala. I personally didn't see anything in the Jedi Academy trilogy that was that stupid of a move for her. I mean, everything she decided to do made sense to me, but it just didn't work out for her. But I don't see that as necessarily a flaw against her. But a lot of people think she's this stupid, incompetent bad guy, which I guess compared to Thrawn she is. But I think she's a perfectly fine villain for what she is, and I like her. I don't really have an issue with her. So, but I get why some people do, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah, and as you get along with her story, I mean, look at her. She gasses everybody at one
Yes,
point.
I love that in Darksaber. That was one of the best moments in the entire book.
Exactly.
She's so humble too. I love this about her. She's like, I don't want to be in charge of the Empire. I don't care. I just want you guys to be unified so we can work together. Like, because at this point, by Darksaber, the Empire is basically the rebellion in the original trilogy. Like, it's the New Republic that's on top, and they're the underdogs. She's like, and the only way we are going to have any chance of defeating these guys is if we work together. So let's stop our bickering. Let's stop fighting one another and join forces and destroy the freaking New Republic. And they're all like, no. So then she's like, fine. Then I'll just gas all of you. And another good thing about that book, too, is that Palion's in there. And he's written super well. Like, that's another great thing about the expanded universe. There's not a single author, even outside of Zahn, that did Gilead wrong. Like, everybody wrote him to perfection. It was great. Like, nobody, even if the book was trash, nobody ever ruins Pelion, which I love.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's probably why everybody loves him, because his character arc, there was no teetering on personality or anything like that.
It's remarkably consistent.
Right. And even when you get into Legacy and when he's confronting Tahiri and she's over there like with the blaster pointed at him, you're going to do exactly what we want you to do. And he's like, no. And I know I'm going to, but I'm still going to stand my ground here. And, this is where we get Dala in the program too, where they have, they always had an understanding. And and stuff. So that was unique writing with her story, too. She, appeared far and in between a lot of stories and stuff, but she was pretty much consistent too with her aim and her what she wanted to do.
Yeah.
And I think she's one of the more compelling. Isani Izehard, what do you think about her?
I think she's a good villain. I noticed re-going through X-Wing for the second time that she starts off really strong. Then we get to Back to War, and she's kind of. I mean, I guess the point is that she's kind of losing it because now she's starting to lose, and so now she's getting more agitated and angry. But she just came off as such like she was so like almost equal to Thrawn in terms of her like scheming and having a one-up on the guys up until that final book where she just kind of collapses. And maybe that's the point, but she just feels like so much weaker by that final book that it kind of sours my taste. And then she reappears in Izard's Revenge,
right?
Which was fine. And they introduced the clone and everything. And I thought her ending there was really good. But yeah, I used to think she was like one of the best villains. I guess I still hold that, but she's kind of lowered since I reread it just because I felt like she was just not threatening at all in that final book of Back to War.
Okay, fair enough. Right. And so Soul Assassin had this pinned up here for a while. Thoughts on Karen Travis?
Oh, another controversial one. We're doing all the controversial stuff today.
Yes, that's
W. Denning, Karen Travis. So I like Karen Travis. My biggest issue with her, she's extremely preachy in everything she writes. In the prequels, I didn't have as much of an issue with it because I tend to agree with her. Like, yeah, they're using these clones. You know, these are people and they're just using them for cannon fodder. So I understood her grievances there. The issue is she doesn't change her stance like at all when she gets to Legacy of the Force era, which Luke's order is completely different from the prequel era. And she does not seem to change her arguments at all when she talks. Like, she still has like the same issues with Luke's order that she did with the previous ones. I'm like, but it doesn't. You should be more happy with this version of the order because it's a lot different from the prequel era. But that being said, I think she is really compelling with her writing, and I'd even argue this might be another hot take that her books were my favorite of the Legacy of the Force books because there's a specific scene in Bloodlines. This is after Jacen's killed Boba Fett's daughter and everything. Yeah. But there's a part where Han and Leia find out what he did. And I don't remember the full like context because it's been like a year. But at least in that book, he's like generally like tearing up and like, guys, don't you understand like why I had to do this? And they're like, we don't know who you are anymore. And like he seems like so destroyed over that. And that's another scene that there's a few times. There's the time in the Redemption comic. There's in the Iron Fist book, obvious reasons, without spoilers, why I cried during that one. And then that scene in the second book of Legacy of the Force that made me tear up. So yeah, I think Karen Travis is really strong with her writing. Her biggest issue is just being preachy. And then the Republic Commandos specifically, I wouldn't have minded the relationship that is established in that series if it wasn't so freaking quick, because you could see little hints of it in the Hard Contact. Right. And had that been like more developed, like maybe they were dating in the second book and then like fully blossomed to a full thing by the third book, I would have been accepting of it. But as it stands, they go from being friends with hints at something else to I am pregnant with your baby and I love you and want to marry you by the second book. And it's just so quick that it bothered me. Like I was like, whoa, slow down, guys. This is crazy.
The timing.
The timing. The timing just have really bad. Yeah. But other than that, like the relationship itself, I don't have an issue with. It's just how it comes together that I really hate. So.
Yeah. And we have Matt Wilkins here. It's like watching Interview the Beast.
Dang. Dang, man.
Okay, so we're going to go into the next quiz question here. So, are you ready?
Okay.
Who did the twins lie to about Jacen being born first? Hint, this is in Crystal Star.
Forget I don't remember his name. It was
Yes.
one of the guys on the ship, though. It wasn't Hethor, the main Imperial guy. It was the other dude following him. I don't remember his name though. So, but I think I know who you're talking about.
It's Hither.
Oh, it is Hethor. Okay. Never mind then. I was wrong.
Because they were Jacen and Jaina, developed a way of like knowing that someone's dishonest, and so they gave him, and then he was basically saying like saying he knows everything about them, he knows blah blah blah, and this is what her parents said, this is what winter is about, blah 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 blah. And so then they started asking him, well, which one of us were born first then, if you know so much and that you're close, blah blah blah.
Yeah. I remember that they said that. I just forgot who they said it to. So that was my Matt Wilkins moment, I guess.
Yeah, so you were close. You were like, You're like, one of them guys that's with Hither or whatever you spell his name. So yeah. Let's see, we have more people jumping in here. So let's see here. We have Small Time Republic. I didn't see when you jumped in, but hello. And then Kenobi's here. Stick Kenobi. Wilkins is a candlestick from Beauty and the Beast. Always getting at each other here.
I guess Chris Nelson is the clock, I guess. Christopher Nelson.
Okay. The
I guess
clock
and the Beauty and the Beast.
There we go. All right. So, and then let me see here. No questions, but I'm just going to hear hard to remember everything from the novels, especially if you read them a lot of them a long time ago. The information blurs together. Yeah, it can be that way.
You're right, but I did read that like a couple months ago, if not a month ago. So that's on me. I just suck at memory. So
yeah, that's okay, because like I said, sometimes we miss certain details.
Yeah.
And then when we go back to, we're like, oh yeah, like I used Matt Wilkins as an example of his rereads. Like I forgot about that, or I didn't pick that up last time I read it. Yeah, it happens.
Or the fact that he refuses to call Vergere a girl, and he'll say Vergere. And we go, oh, that's that guy. And I'm like, that's a chick, man. Get it right.
He is assuming gender. How dare him assuming gender?
That bigot.
So, do you have a favorite game?
Probably.
I know you played KOTOR.
Right. Yeah. I played all the games. Okay. I love the story of KOTOR. One of the best things to me was the twist of the game. It's on episode 5. There. Am I okay?
You were kind of going into digital.
I'm gonna be frozen again.
Yeah. You were kind of digitalized there.
Am I still sounding like a droid, or am I okay? Oh,
you're good.
Am I okay?
Yeah.
Okay, just make sure. It happens sometimes. That's another meme with me, is being a robot half the time I come on streams. But yeah, so in a video game, it's a lot more interactive than reading a novel or watching a movie, because you're just a passive participant. You're just watching the events unfold. But in a video game, you're actively a part of it. You are the character. So the whole game you play as this character. You play as you, and you go to the Jedi Temple on Dantooine. You learn stuff really quickly, and you're like, well, it's a video game, so you got to get done with that. You're not going to spend several years there in real time because you want to get to the action. So he learns everything really quick. You're like, oh, well, it's a video game, so we'll let it pass. Until the twist, and you realize, oh, it's not that contrived. There was a purpose to it. He learned everything that quick because he already knew that stuff, because you aren't really you. You're Revan. And by giving us that reveal, it explains so much throughout the whole game about how you're able to acquire knowledge and do stuff so quickly. And it was just a wonderfully well-developed twist that worked really well. And all the characters you get to interact with and stuff in that game is really great. Like Canderous Ordo is probably one of the best Mandalorians ever to be put in fiction. I love talking to Canderous. And Malik, not the best bad guy. He's a bit generic. But that being said, he's also in the KOTOR comics, where he's a lot more interesting of a character. But yeah, I overall just love the only thing I dislike about that is how much like the prequels it looks like. because it's only like a couple decades away from redemption. Like it's, I don't know, 30 or something years afterwards, something like that, or maybe even 20. It's a short amount of time, but it just doesn't look like how that era looked. It just looks too modern, which is the same issue I have with Dawn of the Jedi, because it looks like if you were just to see a random panel of Dawn of the Jedi, I can mistake that for the Republic comics because it doesn't look that different. That's one of the great things about Tales of the Jedi was how ancient it looked. But that being said, I really love the story of KOTOR and everything it brings to the table, along with KOTOR 2, with Krei and everything. It was a deconstruction of Star Wars without being disrespectful. It made you question everything you understood about the lore and the world without actually destroying anything. Just made you get a different perspective, which I thought was cool.
And that's what Jacen was leading up to at a point, there are going to be people that are going to love the philosophy and stuff, but still question. And then you have Vergere, who does the same thing. So there's different eras of people questioning and wanting to know more, which when we get into Fate of the Jedi with Luke is starting to question a little bit more about the direction, the Force, what's it about, because of Abeloth and stuff like that. Because when you meet a being like Abeloth, and you get more into what was destroyed, like everything that was destroyed, information that was destroyed by Palpatine in the past, and that's coming back to light to you, then you start questioning everything again. It's like, okay, what was really going on here? Who are these celestial beings, and stuff like that. So you start, and then talking with the Killiks, who are ancient species anyways, and learning about what they went through and stuff like that. You do question. Like, it's like you're put in front of your God. And you're like, okay, why? Kind of deal. Yeah. And so it makes it very real for people, no matter what faith you are, because you're going to always question something along the way. And
doubt is a part of life, no matter where your stance on life is. Doubt just comes, whether that be in decisions you're making throughout life, whether that be in a faith you happen to have, or it could even just be you're in a relationship with somebody and there's doubt there. Is it going to work out? Is it going to end in heartbreak? Like, people doubt. And that's just a part of life. So it's just a matter is if your conviction's strong enough to hold through that doubt, or will you fizzle through and find something else?
Yeah. So. And then Soul Assassins asked you have you read the KOTOR comics?
Yes, absolutely. I love the KOTOR comics. This also might be another hot take. I think the KOTOR comics are my favorite out of all the Expanded Universe comics. I think it's that, then Legacy, then the Republic comics. Then it's like a toss-up because there's Dawn of the Jedi, Empire, and Rebellion, and I'm not too fond of those. Oh, and then there's also the original Marvel run, which I've read, and is a mixed bag. Some of it I really love, and some of it it exists. So, all depending. But yeah, I love the KOTOR comics. I love Zane Carrick. I love that he's a really bad Jedi, and that he's also arguably one of the best because his heart's in the right place. I love his relationship with Griff. Zane and Griff are probably two of the funniest characters in all of Star Wars. They're absolutely hilarious characters. Jeriel also has a fantastic arc in there. Yeah. And all 50 of those issues is just, I had so much fun with all of them. And it was cool to see characters that I had already seen in the game be there, introduced a little bit earlier, but to basically have like a completely separate story in a similar era. And it was absolutely great. And when I started the comics, and it starts with literally, Zane's doing his thing, walks in to go see his teachers. Every single one of his students or his other students are dead. You're like, so what's going to happen forward? If that's not like a please go buy the next issue, I don't know what is, because that was an insane opening to a comic.
What'd you think about Kenobi and the Kenobi novel where, Obi-Wan is, thinking about self and thinking about past and how he references Zane and stuff like that? What'd you think about that little callback?
I thought that was really great. I love that John Jackson Miller referenced another one of his series. And the Kenobi novel as a whole, I really love. I'm not going to talk about the show because I haven't seen it. But all I know is that when I watched that, or when I read that book, I could visually see it as like maybe a mini series or a movie of itself, because George Lucas always liked including actors who aren't really actors. Like you had Han Solo, who Indiana Jones and other things, so he was well known, but Mark Hamill at the time and Leia, they weren't well known. And in that story, you're like, it's Kenobi book, so Kenobi should be the main character. But he's kind of a passing character. The main character is actually people you've never seen before.
Yeah, Aline and Oren Gold.
And their whole problem with the farms and stuff, and the moisture farms and the Tuskens. And I was like, you could see that, like, get completely new actors in those roles, and it's like I could see that visually, and it was really cool. I loved also, when people nickname her Annie and stuff, and Kenobi would get all sad about that. And I just thought it was a really well done little book that even though Kenobi wasn't the main focus, which is what you would kind of assume a book called Kenobi would be, I thought how it was handled was super well done. And it's definitely probably a top 10 book for me in the Star Wars Expanded Universe.
Yeah. What do you think about Oren Gold's arc in that? Because he's the villain. He's the villain. He doesn't seem like the villain. He seems like he's just one of them, the leader that wants everybody to succeed. He's trying to make his business succeed with, children that are hellions, which happens in real life. Sometimes kids can be real assholes when they get older, and stuff. So what do you think about his arc in that novel?
I thought he was very human. I thought I didn't think he was a horrible person. I didn't think he was this evil mastermind or anything. I mean, I don't even think he's really evil. I think he's a guy that, he generally cares about the people he cares about, and he thinks that's the best way of helping people, despite the fact that he's kind of also manipulating people. But I think he's a hero of his own world, even though he's clearly not in the right. And I thought he was a really good one-off character to bring to be the antagonist for the story. Somebody else mentioned Plug Eye in the comments, and I thought they were also fantastic.
Yeah,
getting to learn more about the Tuskens and everything outside of Asherod Het, which they had done that in the comics, but as novel wise, getting to get more understanding of what the Tuskens were and how they operate was really good and really interesting, especially because it's a novel and people tend to read. I mean, I don't know that, but a lot of people read the novels and kind of ignore the comic books for some reason. But it's a good way of being like, hey, look, this is what Anakin did in episode 2. Here's the people it was a different tribe, but regardless, it's like these weren't animals. These were people with their own beliefs, their own ideas. And it was another thing and a lot of people have said this that have reviewed it, but it's like a Western. Kenobi comes in like that cowboy, and there's the whole issue with the settlers and the. I know you're Native American. My stepdad is Chumash.
Okay.
But you got the whole cowboy and Indians type of thing going on with they got their own tribe, they've got their whole society, and other people are seeing them as monsters when they're just they are a bit violent, understandably so. It's their planet.
Their cultural is basically torture for adoption and all of that. So their means is very alien to like other species and stuff. So, they see the settlers as they see themselves inferior to everyone else. And so you have that conflict. But it's good to humanize them in a sense. Yeah. Even if the settlers came in and wanted to coexist, the way that the humans and other species lived by farming the water, all that was sacrilege to the Tuskens. And that's why they were like, well, then you guys must die. Everything was sacrilege to them with how, people came and lived on Tatooine. And that was never understood. And so Kenobi kind of, made that a reality. Is like, this is their beliefs and you guys are going against their beliefs kind of deal, and so on and so forth. So that was a really good way. You haven't seen the Book of Boba Fett show, which had them, which did a bad job depicting them. I just know the meme where Boba's on the thing and he goes like that. A bantha. It's a really funny thing. That's the only thing I've seen of it though. I thought it was hilarious though. But. Yeah, that was one good thing about that was that meme there. That was creative. So since we've been bouncing back and forth between all eras of Star Wars, what is your favorite Star Wars era? Like the Old Republic, PT, Dark Times, OT, New Republic, New Jedi Order, or Legacy, and why? So which one is your favorite era? We might know, but... Well, I guess if I have to speak specifically from what you said, I'd say New Jedi Order. But basically everything after Episode 6 is kind of my favorite. Everything that's after the movies, that's just like, here's the sequel to the movies. That's like my favorite part of Star Wars. So Yeah, so you have the New Jedi Order, or not? Well, we have that, but you have also the New Republic era.
Yeah.
That is everything that happens before the New Jedi Order, and then of course you go into Legacy. Yeah, so
all of
yeah,
that is my favorite.
all of it.
Era.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but what do you like so much about it?
Well, like we started this by talking about the origin of how I even got into it. Like I said, I
Right.
was a bit disappointed, and so I came into this trying to see a different sequel to see if I would find a better one, and I absolutely did. And getting to see these characters evolve and grow. Sometimes you regress or devolve if we're counting, Jacen's fall. Because that wasn't a progression I'd necessarily want for him, but that's what happened. And seeing these characters grow up, seeing these characters change and adapt was great. And I loved getting to see Luke become what I always hoped he would become in those. And what I also love is another thing that actually changed for me. This unrelated from Star Wars. I mean, it's connected, but I'd always found Superman really boring as a character, and that changed after learning about the EU Luke, because EU Luke is very similar. He's this powerhouse of a person. He can destroy anybody in the room, but he doesn't. And that's what makes him great. And that's what I came to understand about Superman, which kind of made me flip my entire opinion on Superman through Luke. Because Luke, ever since Dark Empire, this is kind of the excuse that everybody used to kind of hinder him, was he doesn't want to become his father. And so he came close to it in Dark Empire. He tried to play double agent and ended up actually falling. And so he came close to dark side, and that's one of his fatal flaws moving forward, is just being so scared of it, of becoming his father, because he knows he'd be just as he'd be way more powerful than Vader or Palpatine if he were to fall, which is very similar to Yoda and Yoda Dark Rendezvous, where he says, you wouldn't want me to do that because I'd be terrified. And so, you get to New Jedi Order, and he does a lot of cool things in there, but you move forward on to New Jedi Order. He doesn't want to create other Vaders, so he's very hesitant to make his own people go out and do the aggressive act, which needed to be done. And that's another thing. Hot take: Kip was always right. Kip is never wrong, and everybody should listen to Kip because Kip is the best. But in Legacy of the Force, I mean, I know a lot of people hate it, but I think Mara's death was handled very respectively, in my opinion.
Yeah, I didn't mind Mara's death.
Yeah. And I think the reasoning behind it, to make it be like, if I go after Jacen now, I'm going to kill him, and it's going to be out of pure revenge, not out of justice, and I will turn to the dark side, is a perfect reason for him not to be involved anymore. It's a perfect excuse for him to back off, because he is the most powerful character in the room, but he refrains from going all out because he's that paragon, that person that we aspire to be like, is like Luke. And that's the same sort of thing. That's why I made my parallel with Superman. It's like, you have God for certain people in the real world, and that's like their standard. And for people in like the DC universe and its fiction, like Batman and everybody, they look up to Superman because he's kind of like the peak, the ideal that they all want to strive to be like. And so for everybody in the Star Wars universe, that includes Kip and even Jacen till he starts falling. Luke is like who you want to be like. You want to be that peak. And so that's what I love about Luke, and being like that and being so conflicted. Like, that's my wife, man. But refraining from finishing him off because he knows how that will change him, and allowing Jaina to step up and take that place.
Right. And what I loved about, because my favorite novel out of Legacy of the Force is Inferno. And that's where he, when he confronts Jacen, and Jacen then threatens back the Praxium to him, and he's all, basically, you don't want to see. He tells him, you're trying to threaten me. You don't want to see me angry, kind of deal. And that kind of harkens back to his father.
Yeah, is that also the book where there's supposed to be a fight with Lumaya and it ends in like 5 seconds because he grabs her, pulls her, and slices off her head? Or is that the 5th one? It might be the 5th one.
I think that, I have to go back, and I forget which one it is, but I know it's like, I think this, was it in Sacrifices when he fought Lumaya?
It was either 5 or 6.
Yeah.
I know it has to be one of those two, because she was dead there on forward. So it was either the 6th or the 5th book.
I think it was sacrifice, like towards the
Mm.
end of it, and then he's like, and I went and killed her, and then of course everything
Yeah,
that he thought like kind of collapsed down on him because
yeah,
Ben and them were like, no, we think it's so and so, or we think it's Jacen or whatever, and she
yeah,
wasn't even around during that time, and that really made everything that Luke thought that he believed like crumbled there. And
yeah,
that's then where he realized, if I go after Jacen now, I'm
yeah,
tainted. If I go after Jacen, I can take his place. No matter if I win or lose, something bad's going to happen. I can't do
yeah.
this. And that's where we go on forward with Jaina and her training with Boba Fett and all of them. And
Mm.
that story arc, which I thought was phenomenal because she needed, and it was the end of it though, when she did fight Jacen, you would have expected more of her using some of the unconventional
Yeah,
techniques that she was taught, and it didn't happen that way. So that was kind of
yeah.
a down, even though
That
I
was
did
kind of
like
a downer. I think
Jason.
there were some things between Karen Travis and Troy Denning that got affected with that. But yeah, I agree. This is another hot take, just to bring it up because we're doing all the controversial stuff today.
Might as well.
I don't think Boba Fett's that interesting.
Hmm.
Usually, there are a few times where that's changed for me. When I read the open seasons, I thought that was phenomenal, but that was more about Django. But still, there was Boba Fett is dead. Those like comics featuring the clone of him. I thought that was wonderful. And then Legacy of the Force, where I thought, oh, so he's actually going to develop more instead of just being a bounty hunter. He's actually has character development here with his granddaughter and everything, and I can actually see him be a person for once. So my hot take is that my favorite portrayal of Boba Fett is in Legacy of the Force out of all the places we see him. Like, yeah, he's a cool bounty hunter. I get it. People like that. But I need more than that. Like, that's not enough for me to be like, oh, I love this. I need more. So I finally got that with Legacy of the Force and got to appreciate Boba more than I did beforehand.
Yeah, and then like his blood ties, the blood tie comics
Oh yeah,
basically
blood ties. Yeah. Yeah.
he came into fruition because that's when we learned he had a family. Like, and
Right.
what happened, why he left his family, why they split up, and the real reason why he got exiled from Concord Dawn, and stuff like that.
Mhm. Yeah.
There are some type of morals he had when it came to family structure, because that was everything that he always wanted. He lost his father, at Geonosis because of the confrontation between him and Mace, and
Yeah.
so that was always a structure of him, is how he's the imprints that Django left on Boba,
Mhm.
and stuff family wise. And that was something that always stuck with him, even though is a bounty hunter, mercenary, all of that. And then even though he was a absentee Mandalorian, he still had that structure of family, even though it felt very alien to him.
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah. He wanted it, but it felt very alien to him because of what had happened to him and on
Right.
Geonosis, and how he lived after that. So very complex once we get to the stories.
Yes. Yeah. Like I just think his bounty hunter stuff is the least interesting part of Boba Fett. Like, yeah,
Mhm.
that's what we saw in the movies. That's another thing I said in my Bounty Hunter Wars review. They're like, if you want Boba Fett from the movies, this trilogy is perfect for you. If you want
Yeah.
something more, you won't get it here. Is
Yeah,
basically
you're not
what
going
I
to get it
said.
here. You have to
Yeah.
read further. You have to go
Yeah, 'cause
further down.
I was like, it's a trilogy,
Yeah.
so it's a novel. So I'm going to get more in depth with this character because his name's
Mhm.
on the cover. But you don't get that much character, like even understanding with him. I'm gonna get off this because I'm just gonna keep hating on Bounty Hunter Wars. But
You're like,
yeah,
very
yeah,
fast.
yeah.
So I have a channel member here, Jason Fox. Thank you for coming in. Hail OG and MagnenoAlex. Thank you for
Yeah.
coming in. Thank you so much. All right. So getting into more in depth of Star Wars, what is your favorite? Who are your favorite alien species? Do you have a favorite alien species?
I'd probably go with the Vong. I find their whole
Mm-hmm.
masochist like ideology really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I love. I just love how they think because it's so different from what you usually see in Star Wars.
Uh-huh.
And they're really unique and interesting. So I'd go with the Vong for that reason. A close second would be, I guess, the Chiss, because I think the Chiss ascendancy and everything's a really fascinating concept. It doesn't get explored that much, though, but I do
Yeah.
enjoy whenever the Chiss pop up because I think they're really fun.
Yeah. So with the Vong, just describe more what you like about them.
I like the fact that even though we don't really get too much information on it, that they hate technology. It's really unique to have this like sort of organic ships and stuff that they use in there. I like their whole cast. I mean, I don't think their cast system is good, but I like learning about it. And like, you know, I don't like that they just have a whole cast of shamed ones. It reminds me of in the real world, there's like the I don't know what religion it is, or if it's just like a society thing, but like I think it's in like Asia or like in India or whatever, where they have like, oh, the reason you're poor is because in your previous life you were a dirtbag, so that's why you're poor, and you got to deal with it.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
Like
well,
going back to karma from past life or something.
yeah. And so it's a similar thing. We're like, oh, well, you're a shamed one, so we're just not going to care about you. And
because the body rejects their mutation and stuff like that, and all that. So now you're a shamed one because your body's not agreeing with these artificial stuff that we're implanting on you, and arms and eyes and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I love learning about it. I don't agree with it, but I love learning about this whole culture and stuff. So stuff
and
like
then
that
with
is the reason. Yeah.
With the Chiss, so expand a little bit more on why you think that they're fascinating as well.
I like that they're very secretive and they're very neutral, especially like when you read Outbound Flight, they get mad at Thrawn for trying to push certain things. So like, no, just leave it alone. It's like, but if I leave it alone, then it'll become a problem, and I'm trying to prevent that. And I find their whole structure and how they go about things really, really interesting. I wish we got more with that. I know there's stuff in canon, but I'm never going to read it. But as for Legends, we don't have too much of their society besides Survivor's Quest and Outbound Flight. But I wish we could have gotten more, because I would have loved to understand them more. I know we got a little bit in New Jedi Order as well with the Force Heretic trilogy, but I just would have loved to see more, especially because Jag was raised there with the Fells, and that would have been interesting to explore. Like, oh, how did the humans interact with the Chiss and stuff, and how did that all go about working and everything? So that's why.
Okay. And then Rodimus Prime, another channel member. Hello. Alex's favorite junior novel. So what is your favorite junior novel?
Well, it'd be a whole series, but it would be the Jedi Apprentice series. Absolutely phenomenal. Followed closely by Young Jedi Knights, but we don't get that much of Qui-Gon in the movies. We got the one movie and then he dies.
Right.
So the fact that we get, and another thing too, I was like, well, Palpatine says there's 1,000 years of peace, so this whole series is going to be boring. What are they going to do with 12 books or whatever it was of Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon? But they do so much with it in that time frame, despite the fact that it's, you know, during an era of peace. They do a lot of unique and fun things with that. I love Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon's relationship in that series. And Dave Wolverton, may he rest in peace, he started it, but Jude Watson finished it all the way through. And you could really, when you read it, you can feel like Liam Neeson saying the lines that he says. Like it feels like Qui-Gon.
Right.
And it does such a good job of showing their dynamic and their relationship. And it's just really compelling stuff. It's arguably better than some adult novels that have come out of Star Wars in the EU. So I absolutely adore that series.
Yeah. And then the thing is, with people saying, well, that was a time of peace, there's always going to be conflict in peace.
Yeah.
But there's not going to be war, you know, because there's always going to be, when you have politics, when you have governments and different systems and stuff like that, there's always going to be some sort of conflict. And so doesn't mean that, you know, the Jedi were just sitting at the temple just meditating, you know, and stuff like that. They always have to train. They're there. They settle conflicts. That's what they do first. They negotiate.
They did a lot of really interesting things. Which books were it? Where Obi-Wan joins a war on a certain planet on the I forget what it's called, but that whole thing was compelling too. Like, it didn't have to be that great. Like, the whole idea of Obi-Wan, like, this is Obi-Wan, like arguably peak Jedi, and he, you know, before Luke, I guess, and he abandons Qui-Gon to join this little war on this planet. Melinda Dan was just what it was. But I thought that was great. Like, and I didn't know what to expect going into Jedi Apprentice, but it did so many like amazing things and went above and beyond what was necessary for a young adult series. And it's great.
Yeah. Those young adult series are so underrated. Like there's so much information and development with the characters that maybe we haven't gotten in the other books and stuff, and filled in some important gaps too if you really get into the EU and stuff, and are very fun to read. And they are quite mature too.
Yeah.
They are quite mature. So don't, like, say young adult or young readers, don't be mistaken by that title on them. They are quite mature. They are easy read, but they are quite mature in the content and stuff like that. Not as mature as New Jedi Order, but that goes dark. That's dark right there, dark times. So Star Trek Space War, yes, that's one of the things that I like in that series too.
Yeah, we were robbed of ever getting a Jude Watson, Qui-Gon, and Dooku series. That would have been fantastic.
Oh yeah, that would have been a very good.
We got a sliver of it in that special of Jedi Apprentice, or whatever it was, where we got to see the 4 different timelines. We got to see Dooku as a child, Dooku with Qui-Gon, Obi-Wan with Anakin, and that was like the different stories. But it was great to see that, and it was only a small sliver that we got of the Dooku era. But I wish we would have gotten more.
Yeah.
Legacy of the Jedi. Yeah. Thank you, Quinlan.
Yeah. And then, so we're going back to Jacen. So what do you think about Jacen and Tenel Ka's relationship? What's your thoughts on that, the evolution of that, and then also the birth of their child? So that's a long, broad range to talk.
It ends badly, I guess, but I still loved it. And on the EU March Madness, which Matt's doing on the Expanded Universe website, I absolutely chose Jacen and Tenel Ka. I think it was Jacen and Tenel Ka versus Anakin and Tahiri, which is arguably way better. But I still picked Jacen and Tenel Ka because I love them, which is why I was so pissed. Also, I mean, I got over it, but for the Vector Prime, I was kind of seething for a bit because they kept introducing Danny. I'm like, get this chick out of here. Why is she here? Why is she flirting with Jacen? Stop it. Because they literally ended. So Young Jedi Knights started to blossom this romance that they were going to have, and by the end of it, they were officially like together. And then we start New Jedi Order, which is only 6 months after the fact, and they don't even address that they broke up or anything. They're just not together anymore, and it was so disheartening because I loved their relationship, and so I appreciate Darkness and Legacy of the Force for kind of bringing it back. Of course, it's in a tragic way. It's in a way that you don't really want it to be, but I was just happy to see them together again. And then I think Alana's a really cool kid character. I mean, I would love for her to get expanded upon. Until the EU gets continued, that will probably never happen. But I love the dynamic there. And people also seem to be like, well, they're just trying to recreate the prequels, and that's why Jacen won't tell anyone about his kid or whatever. But there was a specific reason. It wasn't for the same reasons as the prequels. The prequels is because of the Jedi Order. In Darkness, Legacy of the Force, it's because of the Happen Consortium, the Hapen Consortium, the whole thing behind that, and it would be a whole scandal.
Behind that is who Jacen is, as well as a Jedi Knight, because the Hapens frowned upon, even though Tenel Ka and her mom came in as first users, and Tenel was raised at the Praxium on Yavin. They still frowned upon Jedi. That was a bad thing, and stuff. And so that was something that people may have misunderstood. Like you said, it's a completely different context of preserving and preserving the Queen Mother's bloodline, and also helping not create any further death threats towards the family and within its own self. And it wasn't Tenel Ka's grandma that was trying to kill them at that one point in Darkness Trilogy. She sent Killix out for them. Yeah.
So overall, I enjoyed how it ended. I enjoyed that Jacen in the end doesn't really get redeemed, but at the end of the day, he did everything he did for his daughter, and he tried to help them out in the end. It was more important to him than fighting Jaina, which was another good thing that I loved, is that he really wasn't trying. He gave every single moment he possibly could to let Jaina just not and leave. But Jaina was very persistent. But you could see he didn't actively want to kill her. He tried to avoid it, but and then she ended up getting him. But I loved the relationship. I wish that it would have been a thing throughout all of New Jedi Order as well, but alas, it was Danny Kui for some reason, and then we never hear from her again after New Jedi Order. Thank God, because it was a horrible ship. Should have never happened. Garbage. Anybody who says Danny Kui's better is wrong, and that's just how it is. Oh, did I freeze again?
I think that was just to show that, that just like with Luke, there was like certain, girlfriend aspects to like Matt Wilkins would be like, I like, who was it like again? Callista,
Right.
like,
He loved Callista. Right. Yeah.
And that just showed like, okay, so Tenel Ka's not really in the relationship right now at this point. So we'll have a person who's crushing on him, whatever. And it was short lived and she eventually dies, which if someone didn't like her, they're probably pretty happy with that.
I was so happy. Yes.
And I love how the Wraith Squadron left her that note. I was like, damn, that's brutal. Because she basically abandoned everybody basically and thought she was better than everybody else too and left him there. And of course they always found their way out of things.
Yeah.
That was amazing. That was a good touch to that.
Yeah. Tenel Ka is also one of my favorite underneath Vergere, she's my favorite female character in Star Wars. So I was glad. That's another reason why I like the ship, because you got my favorite character ever. And then you got my favorite female character in Star Wars, and they're getting together, and I'm like, yes, this is
you're like, yeah,
this is everything I could ever want. It's my dreams come true. So, yeah,
you're like, my fan dreams come true. Yes,
exactly. Yes, I was so happy.
Yeah,
same thing with Jag and Jaina. Frick, sorry, Zach, but get out of here. Go find somebody else. I think he got those two sisters for a little bit. So I mean, you didn't completely lose out.
Yeah, so. he hooked up with the Hapens, right? He hooked up with the Hapens towards the end, which kind of made Jaina kind of jealous a little bit. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
Why? I mean,
yeah, that's just Troy being like, damn it, I have to make it be Jag because that's what everybody wants. But I'm still gonna put it in there. She's a little jealous because I wanted her to be with Zach, but I couldn't get my way, which is okay. But Troy Denning's definitely a Matt Wilkins Zach lover, so you could see it, and that's okay. But that was just him being a little like, I'm going to slip it in there because I can't let it happen because Lucasfilm won't let me, but I need to just put that little thing in there that she is a little jealous so I can have my win. So,
yeah. I can't wait to elaborate more with this. I have to talking to you. So I like
the future of the EU. So even though he's wrong about this and saying that Scoundrel is his favorite Zahn novel because he's wrong, but that's his favorite. So. But he's free to his opinion.
We're all free to our opinion, what we want, what we thought we wanted, whatever. That's what is beautiful about the fandom, that we may not agree on certain things, but other things we may. That's perfect. And that's why I like talking EU, because everybody has their own experience, their own likes, their own journey within the Star Wars universe. And that's a beautiful thing. So I like to keep my shows under 2 hours because that's, I like to say that's like the cozy attention spans for everybody. So I'm going to end with the quiz and maybe another question, and then we'll start wrapping up. Where did Jacen flow walk to, and what did he witness?
He flow walked to the Jedi Temple, and he saw his grandfather sacking the temple, and I think slaughtering the children as well. That was probably part of it.
Yeah, so. And then also felt his turmoil because his focus was doing this to save Padme, which was a very different than what Jacen was planning on doing with the reason why he turned and stuff. So he kind of like justified, like you said in the past earlier in the show, that Jacen's why was very different than his grandfather's.
Yeah, and also changed because he originally fell because he saw a vision of Luke dying, which that's why he fell. And then, or why he accepted Lumaya's offer. And then, and this is another example of the dark side corrupting. He gets to a certain point where he actively wants Luke dead. It's like, bro, the very reason that you did this was for him. And now you don't care. And it's the same thing with Anakin. He did everything that he did for Padme. And what's he do near the end of the movie? He chokes her. You did this all for her. And that's what the dark side does.
You saved her life and you ended her life.
Yeah, exactly.
To save Luke in the galaxy. Liar. Yeah, and then now you want him dead because you figured going on for peace, Luke has to be dead.
Yeah.
So that's the corruption of the dark side. That's the corruption of the dark side. No matter how you go in, if you think you're going in for the good of it, the ends never justify the means. Never, because look, after his death and stuff, the Force still course corrected in the way it wanted to go. And then you get Abeloth, and he through his intentions and what he did, and all that, that basically freed Abeloth from her prison. So I mean, that's a whole different story there.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's Mortis talk.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not going to get into that right now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So with this, very last question now. What is your favorite lightsaber? Or do you have one in mind for yourself that you envision with a certain hilt and color and stuff?
Well, I said on Stevie B's podcast, green's my favorite lightsaber color. As for a hilt, I like Dooku's like curved, so I guess I'd go with a green curved lightsaber.
Okay, and so what do you like about the Dooku's curved hilt?
I just think it's really unique, and it's really cool to look at with the whole way it's designed. I also like the double bladed, but that's like, there's something about Dooku's that just feels very elegant, and I just like that about it. So that's why I go with the tilted hilt. Okay,
awesome. And then one more just for that. Would you be a Jedi or a Sith? Though I know you said green, but what would you prefer to be? Because we know Exar Kun still fought with his blue bladed, double bladed lightsaber, no matter what. Yeah.
Well, like we said, the dark side corrupts. I think the Jedi path is a hard path to follow, because at least if we're talking before Luke's order, I think there's an easy balance to find with Luke's order. But I think it's an admirable thing to do, but it's hard to keep up with because we're people, so we slip up. But yeah, if I could be in Luke's Jedi Praxium, then I would probably try to be a Jedi, because I don't want to be harming other people for my own self-gain. So
yeah. Okay, that's fair enough. All right, so now tell us where we can find you, all the platforms you are on, and if there's anything else you have coming up.
I am on Instagram. I go by the same handle I go on YouTube, which is MagnenoAlex. There is a podcast that me and Quillen Voss, Brennan, have that's coming out next month in April on the Expanded Universe website, expandeduniverse.com, where we go through a whole variety of topics about the Expanded Universe. One of my favorites, which was only supposed to be like 20 minutes or something, ended up being like an hour, which is a podcast called Forgiving Filoni, and trying to find reasons to forgive Filoni, which was really hard, but we found some things. So that was a really fun episode. But yeah, so that will be coming out next month on and you'll only be able to see it on the website. So make sure to go check out the website for that. Of course, I'm doing my EU reviews on my channel, which this is my second time going through most of it. So these are my rereads, the prequel era and all that, because I'd done all of the Return of the Jedi era, and then I had started at the earliest place in the timeline with Dawn of the Jedi and moved my way forward. So now I've read pretty much everything, so now I'm just kind of rereading it. And then, of course, on Quillen Voss's channel, I pop up there from time to time, and I pop up on other channels. But yeah, and then I guess the only other thing is I did these skit videos back in the day when I was in high school and stuff with my friends from school, and that's on a channel called Finn Shamrock, where they're stupid videos, but they're meant to be stupid, and so people have told me they're pretty funny. One of them is called Mexican Hat Dance, which was a parody of the Joker movie, where I become a stereotypical Mexican. And I thought that was really funny, so that's something to check out as well. But yeah,
we'll say that's racist nowadays.
Yeah, well, I'm the color, so I can say it. But
I know.
Yeah, yeah, it was a lot of fun. So that's something to check out as well. But yeah, other than that, I would just say definitely whenever you do this again, I know you already have a list of people, but Quillen Voss he's a must-have to talk to. If I seem like I know my stuff about the Expanded Universe, he's younger than me, and he will put me to shame. This guy knows so much. It's insane how much he knows, and he's younger than me. And he's honestly the future of the fandom. Like he's gonna be up there talking about the EU when we're all retired and old.
Yeah.
So he's great. And with the podcast that I talked about literally exists because of him. I just run my mouth. He does all the editing and the thumbnails and everything. So all of that comes from him. Yeah. And also the Revanchist, Marcel, he does these audiobooks of all the short stories. of the expanded universe, which are really well done. And he's got a really lot of unique and interesting opinions as well. So you should get him on some time. And I know we talked about quality autism a lot with his hatred of Denning. So if you wanted an interesting take there, you could always ask him.
So eventually I will have him on. Well, I mean, to me, it's not about like if I agree with your points or not. I want to showcase you guys on Talking EU because it's always good to hear from others about how they got into Star Wars and their journey through Star Wars. We're always going to have something we disagree and agree with. And so that's the beauty of that, like I don't mind Troy Denning, but I know he absolutely hates him.
He's just that angry bird and going 9999 Denning da 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 da. That's him. That's Noah for you. So
all right, we have one more question here before we close. Soul Assassin says thoughts on Grey Jedi. Another controversial one.
It's not a thing. It's never been a thing. But the closest thing you'll have is perhaps Qui-Gon, because he did not follow the Jedi council necessarily, but he did follow the light side. But he was very loose with the rules of the old order. So that's the closest thing you'll get to a Grey Jedi, but he's still very much intact with the light side of the Force. So, exactly. But I'm sorry, the Grey Jedi were never a thing, never will be a thing. You're wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying anybody who says the Grey Jedi are a thing are wrong.
No, it's wrong. I think that they agree that they exist.
As Paul would say, that's a fact. So
that's a fact. Yeah. With those last words, thank you guys for tuning in to Talking to EU. I do have Quinlan Voss coming in, or Brennan coming in around April 1st, I believe. I have to check our chat because we did schedule it in. So, correct time will be shared here pretty soon. So I do have them coming in as well. I'm going to start talking with other people, booking up through the spring and into the summer, maybe like once or twice a month. I like to keep these as little gems that people can come to and watch again and again and again. So thank you again, Alex, for coming and allow me to interview.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, chat, for coming in and participating and listening to his journey through Star Wars and how it affected his life, or at least how it affected his, journey through the lore as well. And again, you can find me here on my channel, OG Star Wars. My main thing is Coffee Chat or CAF Chat for now. I am developing a new series, which I'm stuck on Ralph McQuarrie because there's so much to talk about with his, impact on Star Wars, because he was the one that him and another were the ones that gave us the visuals on what Star Wars was to look like from here on out. And there's so much history there. It's like right now my editing part is like, I'm deciding what to leave out and what to keep. And it's so hard to decide. I'm stuck. I'm literally like at a writer's or video block right now, you guys. I'm sorry. So
I noticed it's been 2 months since your last video. So it's like,
yes. Yeah. So with that, you guys, thank you guys for tuning in and continuing to support the channel as well. Again, this is about, keeping Star Wars in front of you, the classical, the real, the authentic Star Wars. And thank you again, Alex, for tuning in. And may the Force be with you guys.